to Corporate Cafecito, a podcast based on professional development, career growth, and respecting our cultural identity. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Corporate Cafecito. Me acompaña otra vez Ana Belaval, I'm sorry. And, last time we got into a lot of topics about her career and Ana, tu trayectoria from, being in San Juan with WEPA all the way to WGN and doing comedy shows. But I want to talk a little bit about your culture and the merging of that into your career, because I know you did a TED Talk. So if you guys just Google Ana Belaval TED Talk, you'll hear it. And it's very much
on my website too. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. About the confluence of who you are as a Latina and just your career. So maybe talk to us a little bit about the influence your culture has had on your career.
Oh my goodness. Well, being Puerto Rican, born and raised, is one of the most, de las cosas que estoy más orgullosa. It defines me. I am obnoxiously Puerto Rican. I am extremely proud. My parents taught me that wherever I went, I represented our family and our island and our people, no matter if I wasn't on TV, wherever I went. And
you do.
I wear it.
And you represent us well.
Thank you. I wear it as a badge of honor. And so I think it defines my personality. I think it defines my joie de vivre, the joy of living that I have, and my passion for meeting new people, for telling stories, for caring about others. And so I think I learned from a very young age to be very authentic, that my personality was unique and special and attracted people. And so I learned to embrace it.
How difficult was it, when you think about, yo soy mexicana, and you think about we talked about your parents bringing you to Chicago and then them leaving, or, just being away from family. That's very much an immigrant sentiment where, we have our parents or our grandparents in another country. And I think it gives us two things. I think it gives us purpose, right? Like we want to make them proud, or we want to make sure that they know that this move was not in vain. But talk to me a little bit about that relationship, how it was living away from your parents.
Very hard. It still is. I am the youngest of two. My brother's 6 years older than me, and he lives in Puerto Rico. And it was very strange for my parents to, it surprised them that I wanted to leave, because I always had separation anxiety growing up. I cried every day when my mom dropped me off at school all the way to 5th grade. When my parents traveled, I cried. I never went to camp. I didn't like being away from my mom and dad. And at age 13, for some reason, I told my mom, I need to go to therapy because I need to deal with the separation anxiety if I want to make something out of myself, because I knew that I wanted to do things outside of the island. I wanted to go to college in the States and all that. Mm-hmm. So therapy helped a lot with that. But
was your mom open to that?
Because I know
totally. Sometimes. Okay.
We are a very therapized family.
Yeah. Good.
Our core four, my brother, my mom, and dad, are very much into getting a mental tune-up when we need it, and being consistent with that, and understanding that it is as important as any other health service. So. Yeah. It was extremely hard. I remember my parents crying unconsolably when they left me here, more than when they left me at college.
I think probably because it felt more permanent.
Oh, totally. And when I remember choking up doing an interview. I remember interviewing Henry Cisneros and feeling the homesickness overwhelm me at age 21, not knowing anybody. And so tuve que poner mucho de mi parte, and I had to mature. Back then, you couldn't call your house every day.
No, you couldn't. And I had a calling card to put in a code. Yeah.
I would call collect. And so I made a family here among my Univision coworkers. We were all kind of the same age, and they embraced me. And this city is like no other to come as a newcomer. And, we in Puerto Rico would always travel to the East Coast. We are East Coasters through and through. And so my parents had never been here. And when we first got here and people would talk to us at the line at the Jewel, or if they saw us lost, they would tell us, where do you need to go? Follow us. Or the cab driver told my mom, no, don't get out in this neighborhood. I wouldn't have a daughter of mine living in that building. My mother said it just gave us comfort, right? So it has been very hard because I've missed weddings, and I am there for either the best news or the terrible news. So I don't have the day-to-day.
Right.
And that has been very hard. Harder now that my parents are in their 80s. But we've made it a point as a family. Nosotros somos muy unidos. My mom and dad would come and visit constantly because I didn't have vacation. So they would come. I would go to Puerto Rico in the wintertime once, and then twice. And then they would send my brother, my cousin would come visit. I would go to Florida to see my family. When I worked at Univision, every time I went to Miami, it was my tío and tía who would come pick me up. Yeah. O sea, yo era la más ridícula. A mí me iban a buscar mis tíos. Yo me quedaba en casa de la prima. A mí me decía, vamos a salir de fiesta. Y yo, no, I'm going to go see my family. Because I'm the one who lived the furthest from anybody. And I had no one here. So, it has been the hardest part of this whole thing. And I still get homesick, and I still hate the weather here.
Pero ya te acostumbraste. Sí. I moved to Texas when I was working for PepsiCo. And I remember when I went down there, they have a church downtown for La Basílica de La Guadalupana. And I would go there to feel community. And I would be like, I could go there and the babies would cry. And I'm like, I'll hold your baby. And I just felt like home for a little bit, And so
for me, that is Humboldt Park.
Yeah. Yeah. You just need that place where you just go and it feels home.
Nayeli, I became more Puerto Rican in Chicago. Because growing up, I grew up listening to American music and watching the same cable shows everyone did in the 80s. Queríamos ser americano. No, I went to a Catholic school where everything was in English, but religion in Spanish. Y nos hablábamos en inglés because that was the cool thing to do. No, todos queríamos ser gringuito. And then I got here and I needed my people. I needed home. I will never forget La Panadería Borinquen. Yo llegaba allí and no matter...
I love Borinquen. Yeah.
Ahora se llama Café Colao. And I would show up there and they would feed, nena, estás muy flaca. I would walk down Division Street and they'd be like, Belaval, and it was this thing that even when I met my husband, I took him to Humboldt Park. My Jewish white husband, I took him to Humboldt Park to have lunch there. He had never been to Humboldt Park. And I said, you need to eat here because this is home for me. Home. Yeah. If you can't visit the island, these are the people who have my back. And so I've learned more about our Puerto Rican history here. I've learned more about our music here. And I've had that sense of pride of people like that don't live in their country. When you're an immigrant, you have to assert your identity. And my mom has never understood that. She's like, ¿por qué en los Estados Unidos todo el mundo tiene que ser italiano? Irlandés, griego. She never knew that until she went to college. Que the Irish girl didn't want her parents to know she was dating the Italian guy. My mom was like, you're gringos.
Yeah.
They don't understand that. But I said, Mom, because we may be a melting pot, but everybody's looking for each other. Because I've told this to friends of mine who are like, well, why do they pull for their own communities? I said, imagine if you moved to Sweden or you moved to Indian. Where are you going to hang out with the expats?
Yeah. You're going to find the people who you can relate to. The people
you will assimilate a little bit, but you're going to, when you need home, that's where you're going to go. So for me, for 28 years, it's been Humboldt Park.
I'm also married to a white guy, and when we were in Texas, I had my first son, Alejandro, and I told him, I'm like, hey, my mom's gonna move in for 7 weeks. I'm like, we have to do la cuarentena, but she's gonna get here early so she could get set up in her room. And he was like, oh, that's a long time. I'm like, it's just the rules. And when she was leaving,
that's the good thing about marrying a Jewish guy. Their mothers are overbearing. So he's like, your mom's coming for a month? All right.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. And she would come and agarraba el niño, and then she'd bring me breakfast. And when she left, my husband was like, I'm going to miss your mom.
I know.
But I think it's really important because it's like, it's that community that we look for. But then I also think it's our job to model like that to our families too. So like mis niños, I'm always like, this is where we come from. This is what we believe. This is what we do. This is the food we eat. Pa que no se pierda. Because, when my parents got here, they were Mexicans, right? I was born here, so I'm Mexican American. Now my children are like American Mexican, right? Donde llevan primero, like we were raised very much
Mexican.
As Mexicans.
Yeah.
And so it's just so interesting to see that switch. And now I'm like, well, let me connect you back to your roots so that you understand, and we go to Mexico to my family's still down there. So we go down there all the time. And I'm like, this is where we came from. And so that they can appreciate it.
For me, it was very important that my kids knew that I was from somewhere else and that I came from a different culture, that I was raised a different way. Even though Puerto Rico is a colony of the United States, I wanted them to understand that their mother was different because of por alguna razón. And so that I'm louder and exagerada and I speak a different language and I eat a different food and I feel things differently. And I wanted them to be proud of that. And for me, that was more important than the religion. So I was very open with my husband and I said, I can raise these kids Jewish, even though I was born and raised Catholic, went to Catholic school. But for me, the cultural identity was very, very important. And so I remember my therapist saying, you're going to teach them by example. You don't have to be gung-ho about it. You're just going to teach them by example because every day you talk to your mom and you're speaking in Spanish. Your comadres are Latina and they call all my girlfriends titis. And, we go to Puerto Rico for Christmas and they understand that that's a different kind of Christmas. And so my daughter swears she's Latina.
I love that.
And my son wears the Puerto Rican chain. And más boricua que yo.
Beautiful.
And so my daughter speaks Spanish and my son understands it. Ese bendito. But I've also had to learn to be fair to them too, because we grow up as born and raised Puerto Ricans that the people who live out here are not Puerto Rican, right? You're like, I know, so son los de allá afuera.
Yeah, and it's like the people from Naperville. You're not from Chicago.
You're not from Chicago. Or like you were born here, so you're kind of Mexican, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to learn how offensive that is because I'm giving her mixed messages if I tell her, no, we're Puerto Rican. And then when someone calls her a white girl, I go, because you kind of are. And it's not a friend of mine, it gives them a complex that they don't need because in this day and age, you can identify yourself however way you want. And I'm raising her to be very proud of that. So that's going to be the result, a girl who's going to defend it as if she was born there.
I love that. And I think it's really interesting though, because now my parents are not the same strict Mexicans that they used to be, right? So I've even seen them acculturate as they're trying to like meet my kids and get that kind of relationship going. And when we go to Mexico, my dad just goes like way over the top. He's like, oh, les renté un caballo, and van a traer esto. And I'm like, we never had horses. Why do we have a horse now?
Pero eso es lo que pasa. Yo me pongo la bandera, ella se cuelga, yo jamás me hubiese puesto a chain that said PR, and my little boy with his green eyes is walking around. And his bias t-shirt, and my girl has the flag in the bedroom, and what I have is Puerto Rican art and whatever, but I'm not so in your face. But now that I live here, I'm like, oh my God, dame la bandera, dame la gorra.
Yeah, everything. I want to, I think, so I love cooking. And my husband's from Alabama. And so I told him one time, like, I was like, oh, I'm going to make you meatloaf because I know, like, blah, blah. And then I made it. And he goes, oh, my God, this tastes like Mexican food still. And I'm like, it's the hands. I'm like, el sazón de las manos is always Mexican.
Well, here we put adobo and everything. So
I love adobo. But I think it's really beautiful. When we think about like crossovers, and that's something that you talk a lot about in your career and your aspirations and things that you do. Like we think about like you say crossover, and I think of Gloria Estefan. I think of Selena. I think about like when we think about the big.
Excuse me, Ricky Martin.
Oh my God. That was my first concert when he joined Menudo at the McCormick Place in Chicago.
Respect.
Yeah. Love him.
And when I had I went viral because I freaked out on the air about just listening to his voice, and he heard me. And so it took 6 years, but last year I finally met him in person. And
Is he amazing? He's so amazing, isn't he?
And I had dinner with him. It was great. And we joked like we were cousins, like we had lived in the same cuadra because, we had the same. And when he received the award at the National Puerto Rican Museum of Arts and Culture, he said that when he was accepted in Menudo, even at that age, he saw it as an opportunity to showcase Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my attitude too. That's why now I call him my spiritual guide. I live by the word of Ricky Martin.
Yeah.
And when he said that resonated with me because that's how I've always felt. Like, I don't know why Puerto Ricans feel like we're ambassadors of our island. And we got to tell you that we're the best place to visit, and we're the best place to eat, and we're the nicest people. And so everything for us is an opportunity to showcase that.
And, I love that. I think it's so important because, one, we have been to Puerto Rico. I love Puerto Rico. I could eat there every day. I've never seen such beautiful food made with garlic. I love garlic. And, Mexico, we're more of an onion forward. So,
yes. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. So we're very onion. You guys are very garlic, and I love it. Yeah.
Y pique, mucho pique.
Oh,
Ustedes.
yeah.
Ustedes pican.
And that, even, when we talk about Latinos and the Latin community, I'm always like, we're diversity within diversity, right? Because like, even within our cultures, we're all very different. And sí hablamos español, pero like, I didn't know we were one of the few countries that loves spicy food. And I have some
You're at an Indian level of spiciness.
Yeah. I know.
And I don't believe any Mexican who tells me, no pica tanto. O sea, me muero, me tengo que lavar la lengua.
That's so funny.
A lack of trust. I love you guys, pero that's a lack of trust. No.
Yeah. Oh, that's so
yeah,
funny.
It's interesting. And I think it's your indigenous background, and our Indians were killed faster and there were less of them. And we had more Spanish influence, and we weren't able to keep as many indigenous. We had more African influence growing up and in our history than we did indigenous people, because they killed them. The Spaniards killed them. So there is a small population, but I can tell you that I'm able to trace more of our food to African and Spanish than I can to our indigenous ancestors. Now, some historian's going to correct me and send me a list.
They're going to be like, no, this one was wrong.
Exactly. But yeah, that was my experience growing up. But there is a diversity within a diversity. That's why I think that it was so valuable for me to have worked at Univision and learned about so many cultures. And so I'm still a junkie of Mexican politics. And I follow on social media a lot of their journalists. And during the last election, I was looking for information on the women that were running. And I became more Latin American centered than when I was growing up, because we were more US centered and Europe. And I learned how to love football and understand why the World Cup would paralyze the newsroom. And I'm telling you, it was like a master's degree in Latin America. It was fantastic. And it's made me a smarter person, a more well-rounded person.
When you were saying that, So this podcast is heard in over 30 countries worldwide.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. But you bring up a very interesting point. I think when you're raised in the United States, we're exposed to all the different Latin countries, right? So like we knew like early on we had fajado from Brazil, and we would have pupusas, and we would have arepas, and we would have all this, and you just take it for granted when you're in a city like Chicago. Like when I moved to Texas, I was like, there's no food here. And so, you just take it for granted that you grew up with all of that available. And so when you think about like other countries, or as people get here, they're not familiar with it because they didn't grow up with that diversity in the city. When you think about your experience, and you are, very much, when you started at WGN, you were like one of the first and only in those rooms. You talk about like the proud moments of like being there, and like, were there any moments when you were scared or nervous or?
Almost every day. Still, almost every day, I am afraid to screw up a word. I'm worried that I'm going to break into Spanish. I'm worried that the more tired I am, the more my accent's going to come out, and there's going to be some kind of racist who's going to call that I'm taking someone's job away. WGN has been very protective of me.
Good, they should be your treasure.
If they got calls at the beginning, I never heard them. I never knew about them. And they have embraced those differences. So if I need help with a word, my camera woman yells it. If I mispronounce something, they find it adorable, and I'm embarrassed because, we all have a hang up, and they go, no, it's so cute how you say Snoopy. And so I remember when I got the job, I told Robin, my anchor, I said, oh my God, I'm just worried about my accent, and said, what accent? I sound like I'm from the South Side. Larry has a Boston accent. We all have accents here. So I was very welcome there. The one thing is that by being the only, I have to be the representative of a lot of people. So I've been asked, what do we do for Cinco de Mayo? And I have to tell them that that's a made up celebration and that it's for drinking, and it's not the independence of Mexico. And why are you celebrating? Oh, my light went out. I ran out of the light. But anyway, I was, they would say, why are you celebrating the independence? Are you celebrating Puerto Rico's independence? No, we're not independent. When Hurricane Maria happened, I was people were shocked we were part of the US and that we were being mistreated. So it is not a burden. It is something I carry with pride, but it's tiresome to be the only one,
It is.
And it's tiresome to be like, well, you must know about blah, 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 because you're Latina. Well, no, because I grew up in Puerto Rico and you're talking about Colombia. So it's that kind of thing. But it also gives me the opportunity to say, hey, the next time you want to interview a doctor, I know this Mexican doctor who's great, who you should put on the air. I would like to see less. We're going to do Hispanic Heritage Month, and we're going to do a community show. And I would like to see more, you know what? Instead of calling Dr. Smith, let's call Dr. Mora.
Lopez. Yeah. Or whatever. Yeah.
Lopez, and there is still a reluctance because I know there's lack of resources, lack of time. It's easier to grab the person you've proven that is good. But I feel like the more of us in there, not only making the decisions, but writing the stories, choosing the video, the more it's going to represent us properly.
Any last words of wisdom to our listeners? Okay.
I can't handle this darkness when you work in television.
You're like, I need more light.
Like, I need more light. Exacto. Para que me crean. Because I look like I was in a witness protection program.
We blurred out your face. Like,
words of wisdom. I am reluctant to tell people that you can achieve everything you can dream with hard work and putting it in the atmosphere and having the universe conspire. No, in order for you to achieve your dreams, you're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to knock on a lot of doors, and you're going to have to adjust that dream over and over. I think that there is a movement among social media of presenting success without presenting the hard work and the years that it has taken to get to that success. And I think when I give TED Talks, when I talk to, when I'm a keynote speaker, when I do my comedy, the message is not that I haven't been able to achieve my dreams. The message is that I've had to work hard for it. It's been very rewarding. I've needed others to do it, and I've needed to readjust and be flexible over and over. I think social media gives us and the generations behind us a false sense of, I'll just put it in the world out there in the universe. I hated The Secret. Yeah. Because you know how many times I put out there that I wanted to host the Today Show and they never called?
They're going to call now. They're going to see this and call you.
Porque la piedra que está para ti, aunque te quites. Y la que no está para ti, aunque te pongas. And so you have to work on yourself to accept that and find your own path and create your own spaces. And it may take time, but the longer it takes, the more rewarding it is.
It's a great message. And, you know, you're right. Like I always say, right? The overnight success that was 12 or 20 years in the making.
Yeah. Look at all those actors. Domingo, what is his first name? Coleman Domingo, who's Honduran American. Oh my God. The woman from The Bear who plays Tina, Lisa Colon Sayas, has been in the game. Do you know how many Law and Orders I've seen her and her husband in?
Yes. I love Law and Order.
And when you see her and her husband, you're like, wait, didn't I see you dead in Law and Order?
Yeah. Why do I know you? Yeah.
And so those people in our community that are finally getting their flowers are so ready for it. And it is so unfortunate it took that long. I wish it doesn't take that long for the upcoming generations. I don't want to sound like that vieja who's like, no, you cannot make it in 10 years. No, qué bueno si no te toma. And I'm going to help you that it doesn't take you 28 years, right? But I think you have to understand that you have to prepare yourself. You have to polish yourself. Because even if you think you're really good, at 21, 22, 23, you're still not. Te falta vida por vivir.
Te falta experiencia. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Ana, mil gracias. Thank you for sharing your energy, your story. Thank you for being all of us and for coming here to Corporate Cafecito. We hope to have you back soon.
Of course. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.